Hello everyone, welcome to the first English Legionaries podcast today. This is Toby.
Hello
I'm
guys.
Sasha. I'm a new host for this show, and today we have the man himself. We have Spencer Ferrari-Wood, currently the head coach of the Belgian National Teams, the Barbarians. Hello, Spencer.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Thanks for making the switch over to English too. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
It's a little bit of a challenge for us, but I think we can ride along with it.
Yeah. Well, I would say ich habe ein Jahr in Kärnten gelebt. Also mein Hochdeutsch ist nicht so gut, aber mein Kärntnerisch ist okay.
Okay.
Perfect, Lele.
Yeah, but English is for sure better.
Okay, perfect. Spencer, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you and what's about you? Just tell us a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I'm an American, if you couldn't tell. Yes, I think like a lot of Americans that end up in Europe in American football, I played at the university level in the States, played college ball. Then I came over as an import player in 2014. I played in Poland, had a cool experience there. And then I unfortunately had an injury and I couldn't play anymore. So I turned to coaching. So I coached a season in Austria with the Carinthian Lions out in Klagenfurt. And then I went and coached a year of college in California at Santa Barbara City College. From there, I went to Munich. I was the OC for the Munich Cowboys in the GFL after that. And since the end of 2017, I've been in Brussels, Belgium, where I'm currently the head coach of the national team here.
Okay.
So this is where we're at right now, in Brussels.
Yeah, correct. I'm in Brussels right now.
Ah, okay.
Nice. Spencer, you have been to some stations already in Europe. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience playing in Poland and coaching? Especially for us, interesting is the Carinthian Lions. I think they no longer exist. But how was your time coaching there? Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, so in Poland to start, my first time coming to Europe as a player, it was quite a different experience than playing in the States for sure. I think the biggest thing, and this isn't maybe necessarily the case quite as much in Austria, but my first practice there in Poland, we didn't have water breaks, we had smoke breaks. And that was a new thing for me. Because in America, that's, cigarettes and American football don't exist together. But I had a good experience there. I mean, the level wasn't super high, especially back in 2014. And I was the only import, so I was kind of head coach, OC, DC, manager, everything. So it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, I basically got to make all the decisions and, got to kind of do whatever. And I had a really good time there. And I think I was really just fascinated with, the growth and development of American football in Europe. To see that it was growing and to kind of be a part of that was really cool. So then from there I went to Austria, went to Klagenfurt with the Carinthian Lions, which is a former, AFL team. They used to be the Carinthian Black Lions back in the day, and they were pretty strong program. They've since kind of fallen down a little bit, but I was there in 2016, and that was my first kind of full-time coaching experience there. I was the offensive coordinator. Wow. And I was really lucky because our head coach there at the time was an American guy from Hawaii. His name was Kanani Souza, and he's in his 70s now, but he was a former OC for the University of Hawaii in the 90s when they were in their prime of like the run and shoot offense. And
nice.
he was the OC there, so he came over as a head coach. He had been there before, and just being able to learn from a guy like that. I mean, I'm an offensive guy, so being able to learn from a Hawaiian legend was really, really cool. And really, I still have a lot of great memories of my time there. I mean, I'm the godfather of one of our players' daughters there. I was there for a wedding last year, and so I'm very fond of Austria, of Austrian football. I tell people all the time, a lot of Americans that haven't been to Europe, they say, oh, what's your favorite country in Europe? And I always say Austria. And I'm not saying that just because I'm on the show right now, but I think it's kind of a hidden gem maybe it's not the most
We
visited.
wouldn't take it even it was just for the show.
Yeah.
No problem.
That's true. I mean, you know that Austria exists. Probably most Americans don't even know that Austria exists. They probably think that Austria is a part of Germany. I've heard it a couple of times already.
Yeah, well, in fact, when I first went to Austria, my first thought was like, man, I gotta learn Austrian, whatever language that is. But I was like, oh, they speak German. And I think that's a lot of Americans probably think that.
Yeah, but Spencer, I would like to know, how did you get to play in Poland? Did somebody see you on tape, or did they offer you?
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, it's my experience is maybe a bit unusual because I think the typical import player will come over on I don't know if you guys know a site like europlayers.com. It's kind of like a recruiting site. So a lot of people finish college ball and they make a profile on there. It's like LinkedIn for football players basically.
Yeah.
You can put up your film and highlights and everything. And you can contact coaches that way. For me, I had a friend from the States who had played in Poland a year before. And he contacted me. I didn't really know much about American football in Europe at all at the time. And he contacted me and was like, hey, I'm playing for this team in Poland this year. They're going to be looking for a guy next year. And he had already signed with a different team, a different country. Hey, like, would you be interested in playing for this team? I can get you in contact with the guy. And I was like, sure, didn't know much about it. And, at the time I was 22, fresh out of college. And I got on a phone with a guy in Poland who's like, hey, we'll pay you this, we'll cover this, and you can come over here and just get paid to travel and play football. And I was like, man, where do I sign up? So I didn't really know much about it when it started. And now, I mean, I feel like I know more about American football in Europe than anybody. I love it. I love every country, how they're all a little bit different. I love the sport of American football. I love seeing people, maybe like yourself, that like you're a young player. I love working with young people and helping them grow and develop and maximize their talent. And so it's been really fun for me.
So what was your position in college? Were you a quarterback, or because you said
I was
you
a
were an
receiver.
offense guy?
I was a receiver.
A receiver, okay.
Yeah, and so I played receiver. I played quarterback growing up as a kid mostly, but when I got into high school, I played receiver. And it's funny, I went over to Poland as a receiver, and our first practice, our quarterback, who was a rookie, he wasn't very experienced, and I was kind of throwing the ball after practice with some players, and they said, you throw it pretty good. And I'm like, well, I mean, I've played a lot of catch in my life. And they said, hey, can you maybe play quarterback next practice just to kind of show our rookie how it's done, blah, blah, blah. And then I played quarterback the whole year. But it was fun. I mean, you get to touch the ball every play, so I guess that was fun. But yeah, no, I'm a receiver at heart.
Oh, nice.
Just like me, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, I love receiver. I think a lot of people think receivers are, how do you say, like prima donnas, like they're the divas.
Yeah.
I think in a sense we have it the hardest because no one runs on a field more than a receiver. And no one can quite understand that if you're a wide receiver and you have like a go route and then you come back and you don't get the ball, go route again. And maybe you're like a decoy and you have to run all these go patterns, and we run more than anybody. No one else experiences like we do. So maybe we don't take all the...
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we don't take quite the collisions that the big boys do up front, but I respect the wide receiver position and I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
we run the air raid, so he's a wideout. He knows go is his go-to move. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, the money route.
So, but I have one question: if you're a receiver at heart, do you block?
I block when I need to. Yeah. But here's the thing, and I had to understand this, but I'm not a big guy. I mean, I think, especially in my playing days, I was probably 80 kilos tops. I'm, maybe 190 height. So I wasn't a huge player, so I was always quick and fast. So blocking wasn't something that was a strength for me. But here's something that a coach told me. He said, okay, well, if we have 70 plays of offense in a game, which is quite a lot, but let's say we want to shoot to run a lot of plays. Let's say we run 70 offensive plays. If you have a good game as a receiver, let's say you catch 8 passes, that's considered, okay, that's a good game. That means there's 62 plays where I better be blocking somebody. You know what I mean? So like, I think
makes sense.
Like, I don't like blocking and I want the ball, but if I want to play, I got to understand I've got to be blocking more than I'm catching, even if I'm a really good receiver. So when you understand that, it becomes more important. And you understand the team aspect of football, which is the best.
Oh yeah, I love it. I think we're only 5 minutes into the talk, and we're already talking about statistics. I love it. Everyone who knows me, I know I love statistics.
Yeah, me too.
Head coach. that's you, yeah.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, so you do blog. That's really nice.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Back to your time in Poland. How do you compare the league in Poland to the college league in America? Was it like super difficult to play there, or was it like, okay, you played in college, you know how it works, and you had an easy time?
Perhaps a little add-on to this question. I know that in America, every position is, I think, a little bit more specific and more specialized. So how was it to come over here? And as you have already told, you are the OCDC head coach, coordinator, and everything in one person. So how was this transition?
Yeah, well, I think maybe Poland isn't a great example because, again, especially 6 years ago, the level wasn't super high like it would be in the GFL or in Austria. But to give it a comparison, I would say the majority of our players, probably just like it is on your team, are mid-20s, but we have some young guys who are 18. We have some guys that are in their late 30s and they're still playing. But the majority of the guys were mid to late 20s, I would say. But a lot of them just don't know American football very well. It's a new sport for them. They don't know a lot of the techniques, and they don't know a lot about the rules because it's a complex game. I think we make it more complex than it needs to be sometimes, but there's a lot of rules and things you have to understand. But that being said, I mean, in Poland, I remember one game we were playing the Krakow Kings, and I was playing quarterback, and I remember when they got off the bus, it was a home game. When they got off the bus, they had a dude who I swear was probably like 210 tall and probably, I don't know, like 120 kilos or something. But he was like the biggest dude I've ever played against, and he played defensive line. And I'm not a big guy, and so I remember I'm in shotgun and I'm looking across, and there's this big dude. He was bald, he was tatted up everywhere. And I was like scared to death. And I'm like, this guy could probably play in the NFL. And so like there's every now and then you meet a player who just happens to play in that country at that time in that league, who could have been a fantastic player if he, started playing when he was 4 in the United States, but he started playing a couple of years ago when he's 28, So I think just like Germany, Austria, Poland, there's always diamonds in the rough. There's always guys that you're like, man, you really shouldn't be here because you could play at a really high level. And then there's a lot of guys who are very young and new to the sport, who maybe their level isn't quite high. So it's kind of tough to give the comparison to college. It's definitely a step down from college. I think structurally, organizationally, athletically, yeah. But there's a few guys that always stand out that are really, really strong. And I think, to answer the other question about, kind of being OCDC head coach, everything, that was very new for me. And I think, when it comes to imports, and I don't know if this is kind of the direction we wanted to go, but when it comes to import players in Europe, so Americans that come over, I think a really important thing for them is a guy who knows football really well and loves it. And I don't mean like he knows receiver, he knows football. Because I think for me, like I had to learn how to teach guys how to tackle who had never tackled before. And I'm like, well, man, I played offense my whole life. I mean, I know how to tackle. I mean, I played special teams, or I played football my whole life. I can do it, but that wasn't a specialty. And I think looking back, I wish I would have been more well-rounded so that I could really effectively teach every position. I think, every coach should strive to not just be a specialist in one area, but to be able to effectively teach every position. And it's hard. But I think, you should have a specialty. I'll always be an offensive guy at heart. But I've learned to understand the basics of defense and how to tackle, how to, form special teams units and everything. So I think that was a steep learning curve for me.
But you've made it to the head coach of Belgium, so you gotta understand it somehow, at least. So. Yeah,
and I'm also the offensive coordinator here, so I kind of double in my role as a head coach in OC. And I love calling plays. I love drawing up a scheme, and I don't think I'll ever want to get away from that.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And how come you're now in Belgium?
Well, I don't know how much time you have. It's kind of a long story, but but yeah, so after I had a year in Munich, had a really cool experience there. And then I had a chance to come up, and yeah, I mean, I'd never been a part of a national team before. And if you're not familiar, I mean, a national team, it's such a different grind than at the club level, because I was used to club level, having been in Poland and Austria and Germany, where you have, 8, 10, 12, and, Germany was 14, regular season games. And it's a weekly, you're game planning for your opponent, you're scouting, you're watching film. Where the national team, we have about 2 games a year. Last year we had 3, but we have usually 2 games a year. And a lot of times it's against an opponent that you don't have any film on, or it's an all new coaching staff or all new everything. And we really play in the months of September and October, and that's it. So it's like, maybe 8 straight weekends of training camp every weekend. And it's like an intense grind for 2 months. And then, 8, 9, 10 months, you don't play. So it's just different. But I came up here and I had a chance to, just be on staff with the national team, and got the job as the head coach only because the current head coach was going to step away. And so it's kind of just, the right timing for me. And right now, I mean, just to be clear, I mean, I'm not full time. In fact, I don't get paid a dime for it. I mean, I work in the financial sector here in Brussels. So I do something very different than American football, just like you guys. And I think now, having been an American import player in Poland and in Austria and Germany, where that was my full-time job, and now I work in business in Brussels, and then I coach for free on the side. I understand even better now, like, man, all the coaches who do this for free, you gotta love it, because you don't get anything from it, financially, or the ones that do, it's, not a lot. It takes a lot of time away from, your family and other priorities. All of our players are full-time students, or, have jobs or a wife and kids, and we all do this as a hobby. It's a passion. So I think, being able to see that side of it here now has helped me kind of have this newfound respect for every coach and every player in Europe who just really does it for fun.
Okay, great, yeah.
Question?
No, there's no question for me. Well, I think one thing we can tell is we love it. And so it was like 3 months ago, so we had a quarantine in Austria. So that was like a hard time, tough time. But still, we tried to keep us on track with football. So we had a lot of meetings at that time. So like every second day almost, we talked about football and went through plays and analyzed them, because basically he wanted to teach me how to play as a quarterback. But I found out that it's not my proper position, so I'm also a receiver in heart. So we gave up on this one earlier. For now.
The time will come. But I've heard you've also had a quite scary time during the COVID situation. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I've heard that you and your newly wedded wife have had the virus as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how you overcame it, and how was it? Are you back to full health now again? Because we hear all about these long-term issues with this illness. Just for interest.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my wife, we both got the virus kind of early on. I think when it was still pretty unknown. And I think that's why it was a bit scary at the time, because we didn't know anyone who had it when we got it. And so it was kind of scary because we were the only ones. And so my wife got it and I got it just after. Probably from we can't say for sure, but probably because we take public transportation into Brussels every day. We live in the suburbs outside the city, so that's probably the reason. But I don't know if we'll ever know. But yeah, it sucked. I mean, it was a really tough, I would say, week. There's a lot of different symptoms in my wife. She actually experienced different symptoms than I did. She had really high fever, where I had the fever as well. But I think the thing that was worse for me was I had like really bad body pain, like aching pain, not like you're sore after a football game, but I can't really explain it. It's like my whole body was just like weak and in pain. But I think, the biggest thing that was weird was we both lost our sense of taste and smell. I've since gotten that back, but my wife, she still has issues smelling things, and she's a chef, and so to not be able to smell things is hard, especially for her. Yeah, it's strange, you know. It's like you don't realize how much you love the smell of, you know, freshly cooked bacon in the morning until you can't smell it. Coffee or something. But I guess we don't get to smell the bad smells either, so I guess there's that side. But yeah, but it was a tough little time, but we got through it. And you know, I think besides my wife's sense of smell not being 100%, I mean, we're healthy and we're good now. And it's really become a big deal around the world because, again, you know, at the beginning of March when we got it, it was still kind of unknown, but we just happened to be one of the first. But we're healthy now, and we learned a lot of things through it. And you know, we had only been married for 3 or 4 months when we got the virus, so there's nothing that will test your marriage other than getting quarantined and thrown into lockdown for a long time. So it was really good. I mean, from that sense that we really got to get to know each other even better. I mean, and just spend that time together. So it was unusual, but we survived.
Yeah.
So you're still not even married at 1 year. So congratulations are more than welcome. So
yeah,
congratulations.
thanks.
Congratulations.
Yeah, oh, nice. And how did you spend your quarantine? Especially talking about football. Did you get? Are you still in, or did you organize your Zoom meetings? Did you organize something that you can keep in touch with your team? Did you upgrade your football knowledge if that's possible?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one thing that the quarantine and kind of lockdown provided for a lot of people, was that, you know, we had a really unique opportunity to learn a lot more stuff. I mean, there was you guys probably saw, I mean, there's been so many online clinics and Zoom calls with, you know, really well-known coaches that just gave stuff out for free. And there was this unparalleled, unrivaled knowledge that was out there for free now because of the lockdown. And I don't know that we would have been able to have access to that if we didn't all go into lockdown. So I'm not going to sit here and say that coronavirus is a good thing or whatever, but I think having all of us stuck in our homes, you know, that provided us a chance to really do some, deep digging into the knowledge of American football and learn some new things. And I learned a lot of new things. I went on a bunch of online clinics and listened to coaches that I wanted to listen to for a while. And I listened to a coach in Spain. I listened to one in Italy. I listened to ones in Austria, some in the States as well. So I was able to improve my knowledge too. And I was only able to do that because we were all in lockdown. So yeah, I mean, I think I was proud of the way that I spent my time. I mean, you know, trust me when I tell you, I've watched a lot of The Office as well. So I mean, I don't want to say I was studying football the whole time, but
the Steve Carell version or the original?
Yeah, the later one. I actually never seen the original, but I'm sure it's good.
Okay.
But I think, you know, I was able to learn a lot of things, and this is what I tell people, you know, when it comes to tough times, because coronavirus, especially at the beginning, everybody struggled. Like everybody everywhere struggled because it's new, you know, and I don't think times like these bring out the best in people, but I also don't think they bring out the worst in people. I think they bring out exactly who you are. And I think, you know, when it comes to struggling, you know, people that win, like winners view the struggle as a privilege because it gives you an opportunity to prove yourself and become better at something, while losers see struggling as an unnecessary inconvenience and they want to avoid it at all costs. And so for me, like when I look at something that's a struggle, that's really hard, it's an opportunity. It's a privilege. It's not like, oh man, life is hard, I'm just going to sit inside and, you know, sleep or watch Netflix or not do anything all day. It's like, man, no, now I have a crazy amount of time that I'm able to learn things I never had time to do before. You know, how great is that? I think I read more books during quarantine than I had my whole life combined. So there was a lot of positives that came out of it, you know, out of a really unfortunate situation. And so I think, you know, some people will use that time to learn and engage and grow, and others will kind of squander that opportunity with just relaxation the whole time. Yeah, I think I'm glad that I was able to find some time to learn and improve my knowledge.
So you said you improve your knowledge, but do you also do this by watching tape of great players, or do you especially have some kind of role models you want to talk about?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of players, a lot of American football players, you hear people say that they model their game after so and so. So for me, to give an example, like, and this maybe is a little bit before your time, but when I was growing up as a young receiver who was kind of undersized, I wanted to be like Wes Welker, who was the old Patriots guy. He was a little slot receiver. He wasn't big. He wasn't even that fast, but he was just somehow always open. He just somehow found a way to get open all the time. And so
that's a difficult part, yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough part. So I think studying guys like that for me was fun to see, okay, how does his release, like how does he do things with his release? How does he, adjust his alignment or his stance, based off different formations or coverages, whatever. And I modeled my game after him. But now as a coach, I do the same thing as a coach. I don't watch players always, but I watch coaches. How do coaches handle situations? How do coaches, even on the sideline, how do they handle their players on the sideline? And there's a few coaches I really like. Some you might laugh and some you might understand. One of my favorite coaches ever is a guy named John Gruden, who's the head coach of the Raiders. And I've always just loved Gruden. He's a little crazy. And I've always thought to myself, like, because I love football. I love football more than anything. I love football. And I've always thought, I've never met anyone who loves football as much as me, but I've never met John Gruden. Because maybe he loves it more than I do, because this guy lives it. And I've read his autobiography, which is hilarious and engaging. So I really love Gruden. I'm not a Raiders fan, but I love Gruden. I am a Rams fan. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, where the Rams used to be. And so maybe I'm biased, but I like Sean McVay, the head coach there, and he's an offensive wizard. I mean, seeing the way that he utilizes motion and different formations and deception as an offense. I mean, he does a really great job, and I like watching what he does. So yeah, there's some coaches like that I like to try to model my game after and learn some things from. And because a lot like me too, Sean McVay, when he became the head coach, he was 30, 31. He was a head coach at that young in the NFL. It's crazy. Yeah. So he can relate to being a young coach. When I was in Austria, when I was in Germany, I signed as the offensive coordinator with the Munich Cowboys in the GFL. I was 24 years old, which I was the youngest coordinator in the history of the GFL. And I don't say that to brag, but I say that to that was a big deal, and I didn't know that. And so I had to learn, okay, how do I coach players who are mostly older than me? Like, how do I show them that they can respect me and they can trust me and that I have authority, but I also want to relate to them and be friendly, but there's a time and a place for both. So, learning things like that from, people like Sean McVay has been fun to learn.
Okay. But so, yeah.
Just one question. Yeah. Do you also have the XY banana play?
Oh, Spider 2 XY banana. Yeah, it's the best play in football.
Yeah.
Well, I have no clue what you're talking about right now.
I think that's a favorite play from John Gruden.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, my question was talking about role models. I'm a huge DK Metcalf fan, and I would like to know, as a coach and as a former wide receiver, what is your opinion about DK Metcalf?
The thing about DK Metcalf, I think he's a physical specimen. I think he's the guy, like I said, in Poland, like when you want him getting off the bus first. So people see him and they're like, oh no. Because he's built, I mean, this guy is built like a freaking Mustang. I mean, they don't make guys like him very often. So I think physically, I mean, he's big, he's strong, he's fast. He reminds me a lot of an older receiver, maybe you're not familiar with as much, but Terrell Owens, T.O. He was another guy kind of when I was growing up who was just a big, strong, but also fast receiver. So DK Metcalf is kind of made in that same mold. I think the knock on him was maybe his hands, which is funny because you're a receiver, you think that would be everyone's strength. But I think he had some issue with drop passes when he was in college at Ole Miss. But I think a lot of NFL coaches will look past that and fall in love with a guy who's 6'3", 225 and runs a 4.3. It's like, okay, well, we can work on his hands. Like guys like that don't fall off trees, So I think, yeah, physically he's really impressive. I think he's a hard worker. Seems to be a really great guy. I think in that system in Seattle, I think maybe more than any other quarterback in the NFL, Russell Wilson makes his receivers better than they are sometimes. Because he's had a lot of receivers there that weren't like all pro guys or weren't, high draft picks. But he just gets done what needs to get done. I mean, he extends plays really well. So I think, having Russell Wilson paired with DK Metcalf is a really good match. But I think Metcalf's going to have a really good career. I like him. I think he's only going to get better.
Yeah, me too. What some guys said as he started this season at the Seahawks, they said he had some troubles with releases and his technique wasn't that good. But he always improved. So he even got, I guess, MVP of playoffs, I guess. It's called like that trophy. No? Okay, well, that was my fault, but forget about this one right now. So there was an interview and I liked this scene. So what happened was they asked him, so DK, you think you might be one of the greatest. So why would you think that you might be better than Calvin Johnson or Julio Jones, for example? And his answer was, I love this quote. He said, well, you just haven't seen me yet. So just wait for it. And I love this attitude. And he always proved that he can improve, and his work ethic is like a phenomenon.
Yeah.
I'm
he's
just
a
waiting
beast.
for him working out in the driveway, just so to get interviewed while doing crunches.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he can show off his crunches, his abs. He's phenomenal athlete. And Theo also did this, so perhaps there are more similarities.
Yeah, well, and T.O., I mean, he talked a lot, but he backed up with his play. He was a phenomenal player. And I don't think DK Metcalf is maybe as arrogant as T.O., but he can say things, and if he can back it up with his play, then, why not? But yeah, I think that's a good answer. You haven't seen me yet. That reminds me of a quote in a movie. Have you seen Sully? It's about an airplane guy who he crashes his airplane into like a river and saves a bunch of people. It's a real
Tom Hanks?
Yeah, Tom Hanks.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's a true story, but I remember one quote from the movie, and they were talking to the pilot of this plane. They said, "How did you land this airplane and not kill everybody on board?" It's unprecedented, which is kind of a big word in the English, but they said it's what you did is unprecedented, and his answer was, "Well, everything is unprecedented until it happens for the first time." Right? Before, I don't know who it was, but the first NFL player to run a 4.4, that was unprecedented when he did it. And then now it's like, there's 50 guys in the NFL who run a 4.4, so it's unprecedented until it happens for the first time. So I think, maybe DK Metcalf maybe there'll never be another player like him because we just never seen one like him before.
Yeah,
we'll see.
That's true, yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us? I think we've scratched a little bit about the Belgian national team. How is the club situation in Belgium? So how do you recruit your players? Are there enough players so you have to cut them, or how do you do your job?
Yeah. So it's a good question because it's definitely different from the club level. So our season was canceled this year. I mean, most. So we didn't have a national team season. Even the Belgian club season is canceled this year. But I think it's the right decision. I think it's a much needed, time away from football, at least at the moment. But I'm looking forward to next year. But to answer your question, I mean, so as a national team coach, so I don't coach at the club level, and this is a little strange. So I actually, because in Austria, for example, I know Max Soma is the head coach now, but he was a longtime Graz guy. There's been other like Schulen, guys like Chris, who coach the national team. They also coach at the club level. But me, I don't coach at the club level. I only coach national team. So what that does is that gives me the chance to go to all the club games, see every team, and scout the players. And I look at the guys that stand out. I look at games that I wasn't able to attend, and I look at the film, and I say, wow, who's that guy? And the thing about Belgium is most of our players that play here are Belgian, and they have a Belgian passport. Because if you watch the GFL, a lot of the players aren't even German. So from a national team perspective, that wouldn't be as helpful. But for me, I can watch any club game here, and it's a good chance that every player is going to be Belgian. So I can really scout players that way. And so right after the club season, we'll have an invitation. And so we have kind of a combine style training where we invite 120 players to come to the national team invitation. And we'll have to put them through like a full training camp weekend. All of our coaches will evaluate the players. And then after that, we'll cut that down to 75 players that will be part of our program. Now, when we have a game, we can only take 50 in a game. And that number kind of changes sometimes depending on the IFAF rule. But we have 75 guys in our program, and then about 25 of those actually won't be able to play in a game. So we have to cut it down a little bit. It's the same thing with the NFL, where you have your practice squad players, and then you have your 53-man roster. It's kind of like the same for us. So it's different. But we scout the club teams, and we select the guys we like, and then we kind of cut it down to the game day roster, and we go from there.
Well, that is different to the Austrian way, because in Austria, every single football player can sign up for the combine, and you can try it out. But I guess you just said you scout players, so you really invite them for the combine.
Yeah. But in the past, a couple of years ago, it was like it was in Austria, where you could sign up. It's actually a really good fundraising opportunity for the national team, where you pay $20 and you sign up. So we had a lot of guys there who don't belong there, but they want to sign up and try out. That's fine.
Yeah.
And we would have a ton of players, make a little bit of cash. So I understand that perspective too, and we've done that before. But I think from a purely football standpoint, it's easier to select the guys that you want and invite them. And then you kind of cut away all the guys that really don't need to be there. But yeah, we've done it that way before too, but that's the way that works best for us.
There are some hidden talents, because there was one guy I remember, he played in Division 3, and I guess nobody really looked at him because they're probably mostly AFL players and the national team. But he was a Division 3 player, and he was so good that he tried it once a trial for the national team, and then he also played in a real game. Like, it wasn't even like a test, or it was just a championship game, I guess. So I like the way it is in Austria, to be honest.
And one thing that we did last year for the first time, and we'll probably continue to do this, is we have our invitations. So we scout the guys, and we select the ones that we want. But what we do is every single club in Belgium, whether they're Division 1, Division 2, or Division 3, every single head coach can nominate 3 guys from their team that want to come to the invitation. So that might be a guy that we didn't see, or maybe I went and watched a game for this Division 3 team, but maybe that player was injured, he couldn't play that day, but this head coach was like, hey, no, you need to give this guy a chance. And so we've had a few guys come through like that. In fact, last year, the guy who started our last game of the year, running back, he was a low division guy. We didn't know him. His coach suggested him, and he ended up starting for us against Hungary, and was a really great player and had a good game. So yes, so we kind of combine a little bit what Austria does too. So
okay, I see.
Trust the head coaches and let them, nominate the guys that they want to.
Okay. So in Belgium, is there already some kind of action going on the field again, or is it still closed down entirely?
So at the club level, as a federation, they have decided that there won't be any competition this fall at all at any level. Now, there are some teams that have played some friendly games. Like, there's been 2 games that have played that were just friendly games. So if players and coaches and teams want to play, they can play, an unsanctioned friendly game that doesn't have any meaning as far as rankings or standings or, relegation or whatever. And we've had a few teams do that, and I think we'll still have a few teams that will do that. But there's officially no competition this fall for national team, for club, for juniors, whatever. And we'll look to do that next year.
Okay. So are there still some sanctions on, or some measures taken so that the coronavirus does not spread within a team? So do you have to disinfect your things? Do you have to measure the temperature when entering the facility or something like that? Because we need to do that.
Yeah, I think it's hard to keep up with all these restrictions because it seems like they change every day. Maybe here in Belgium it's different, but I know the reason that we canceled everything from a federation level was for that we were just like, we can't comply with all of that. It's costly. It's just gonna be too much to do. But then, maybe a couple weeks go by and the government kind of releases a little bit of the restrictions, and so we're able to play some games and it's okay. And then they kind of bring some more restrictions back. So it's just a lot of uncertainty right now. And it changes so often, it's hard to keep up. So I think we just said no competition. We have some windows where some teams can play when the government will allow them to do so. But besides that, I think it's smart to take a step back to be safe.
So as you said, you take a step back, you try to focus on yourself. One thing, I subscribe to your newsletter, and one thing I think you're big on is, of course, we already heard that you're big on sharing your thoughts, but also you're big on personal development. And you've scratched a little bit this topic, but I'm quite interested for myself and also for our viewers. How do you think that your personal development made you a better coach? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, this could be a whole nother podcast session talking about this subject, but I think I love personal development because
Scotty, you got 20 minutes.
But yeah, well, thanks for subscribing, by the way. I'm glad you enjoy it. But I think, for me, I think, as a young coach, I just realized really quickly that I'm like, man, I don't know that much, and I wish I knew more. And so the only way to get better is to, invest in yourself and to grow. I think that goes for anything beyond American football. I think that's, if you want to, be a better parent or be a better school teacher or be a better businessman, you got to study how to do that. You got to learn, you got to listen to podcasts, you got to, take an online course, you got to watch clinics, you got to go to things and try to understand and learn and invest in yourself, because, we all only get one chance at life. And maybe there's some different religious beliefs out there that you get multiple or whatever, and we don't have to dive into that. But, my belief is that we only get our body one time. We only get life on earth one time. And if we know that, if we believe that, then why wouldn't we want to maximize what we have, right? Like, in fact, one thing I posted recently, maybe you saw, is like, there's no limit on better, right? Like, talent is distributed unevenly. You can look at your American football team and you can see, okay, some guys were given more talent than others. That's just how it is. Like, let's just call it how it is. But there's no limit on taking what you started with and making it better. I think, one tiny step in the right direction is always better than no step in no direction. So I think, a lot of times, you might have a young Austrian quarterback who is 15 and he's like, I want to be quarterback. I like throwing the ball. And he looks at a guy like Tom Brady and he's like, I want to be Tom Brady. And I think that's great. But then maybe they start training and they get frustrated because they're like, but I can't throw it like Tom Brady, or my receivers don't do this, or I can't find the way to do it like he does. It's like, yeah, you're 15 and Tom Brady's 87 years old.
At least.
Yeah, but so it's like, I think we have to take it one step at a time. And I think people get frustrated because they know where they want to be and they see where they want to be and they know that's the level I want to get to. But then all that room underneath, like the path that it takes to get there, not everybody wants to do that, and I think that's the thing it's hard is, I think people in our generation, especially, we feel like we don't have time for that. Like, I want to be the best, but I don't have time to put in the work to be the best, but I just want to be the best. And I think that's the thing. So for me, when it comes to personal development, I've realized that it's one thing that you take, one day at a time. I'm not going to be where I want to be tomorrow, and I think like if the only reason you're not pursuing a dream is because of the length of time it'll take to achieve it, like, you should start right now and think long term, because there's an old Chinese proverb that says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. So yeah, you should have started earlier, but you didn't. So you should start right now, because if you wait, you're just gonna, your future self will not be happy. So I think, personal development to me it's something that I want to continue to, for the rest of my life, always strive to invest and improve myself. To give like another kind of little quote that maybe you can remember is like, everybody wants the results. Everybody wants to be the best. Like there's no one that I know that's like, oh, I just want to be average or I want to be mediocre. Everyone's like, no, I want to be good. I want to be a good employee at my work. I want to be a good student. I want to be a good football player. Everybody wants the results, but it's so rare to want the lifestyle, like wanting to make a lot of money, wanting to be at the top of your field, wanting to be the smartest person in the room. Those are all ambitions of average people. But saving more money than you spend, grinding it out every day over a long period of time, reading something new every day and learning, those are ambitions of the rare. Like wanting it is easy, but living the lifestyle is hard. And so I think, for me, just learning that when I did was helpful, that like, it's normal for people to want things, but to actually go after it every single day, that's something I want to do forever.
That's great. That's a great attitude. Yeah, of course.
Of course, it's really great. But I always, I always wonder, because most people I think I find with who have that mindset, they usually have this one experience that turned them and said them, okay, I want to do something with my life. I have a role model, something like that. Do you have an experience like that? Did something start the fire in you?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know if it's a specific moment, but I think it started here in Europe. I think, growing up in the States playing American football, it's such a big part of the culture. I think one big separator from American football and American football in the States is, for example, like weight room culture. In the States, going in the weight room and like transforming your body to be a functional athlete is a huge part of American football. Where in Europe, a lot of guys go to the gym and do some curls and calves and bench, and that's about it. But it's like, well, that's not making you a functional athlete, but you look good. So it's like, I think that's one thing that's a big difference. So to answer your question, I think when I came to Europe, I think especially probably in Austria, when it was my first like really full-time coaching opportunity, I looked around at the team and I saw a lot of guys who we had some talent. We had some guys who weren't as talented. We had some guys that worked hard, some guys who didn't work that hard, some guys who, had a lot of money and resources to put into it, some guys who didn't. And I looked around and I'm like, okay, how do I make this team better? How do I get this group collectively to move in the right direction that we want? And I think that it was a moment, if I can say, it was a moment where I realized like, I don't have all the answers and I want the answers, but I just don't have them. So I need to find them somewhere, or else I'm just going to sit here without answers and they're paying me to give them no answers. You know what I mean? And so I think I kind of reached a point as a coach where I'm like, okay, they're paying me to be here. I need to provide. I need to produce. And so I think I had to look inward and I had to ask myself the question, like, do I want to be average or mediocre? I think, average people, being average is like you're the best of the worst, or you're the worst of the best. So it's like, why would you want to be mediocre? No one wants to be mediocre. And so I said, well, I don't want to be mediocre, so I need to learn and improve. And so I started just researching things, looking online, going to clinics, going to different camps and learning from different people. And to take it a step further, there was a book, and anyone who knows me will know that I recommend this book all the time. It's a book that really changed my life. I didn't grow up a really big reader, and that's, if I could tell anything to my 15-year-old self, I would tell him, read more, because reading is like free information and people don't take advantage of it. And I wish that I did. And I didn't start reading till a few years ago, like really reading a lot. And I don't read fiction. I don't read Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. I watch the movies, you know what I mean? Like I don't read that. I read like how to become a better leader, how to be more efficient, stuff like that. And there's a book I read a couple years ago that really changed the way that I live. And I still reflect back on it today, and there's still a lot more I can learn from it. And it's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And if you're interested, you can go online. I mean, follow James Clear. He posts a lot of good stuff too, but Atomic Habits, and it talks about, how to build better habits, how to break bad habits, how to see continuous improvement over time every day. And to give one quick example, and I hope I don't talk too long about this, but I love this kind of stuff. But one example from the book is like, okay, you want to build better habits. We all want that. You want to break bad habits. Yeah, everyone wants to get rid of bad habits. Well, how do you do that? And one thing that he talks about is actually creating an environment that is conducive to success. For example, let's say that I say, I want to set a goal and I want to eat more fruit, just as this example. I want to eat more bananas.
Yeah.
I want to eat more healthy. I want to eat more bananas. And it's like, yeah, but I don't want to go to the grocery store and get bananas. I don't want to, but one easy trick to like trick your mind into eating more bananas is like, yeah, go buy bananas, but like sit them on a counter in your kitchen where you constantly see them all the time. Because sometimes like with fruit, because it's a perishable item, it goes bad after a few days, is maybe we freeze it, or we put it like in the corner of the kitchen where we don't see it, or we put it in a drawer, we kind of forget that it's there, and then we go back and we're like, oh, well, it's bad now, I can't eat it. But like put it in a place where you constantly walking by it and you're like, I should eat a banana. It's right there, And so it's like, how do I create a physical environment that is going to help me like trigger things in my brain where I'm like, okay, I should do that. It's the same thing like,
sleep in your training clothes.
Say again?
Sleep in your training clothes. If you want to take a morning walk.
I was going to say the exact same thing, not to sleep in it, but I was going to say, lay out your clothes. It sounds like childish. I lay out my clothes the night before, because when I wake up, my alarm goes off. If I think to myself, because I wake up really early and I go to the gym the first thing in the morning. And if my alarm goes off, if I don't have my clothes, I don't have my breakfast laid out, it's easier for me to be like, yeah, but I gotta go find clothes to wear. I gotta find breakfast. I gotta do this and that. I'd really rather lay back in bed. So what did I do before? At night, the night before, I lay out my clothes. My wife could tell you, I lay out my protein, my pre-workout, my breakfast. I had like a simple granola bar just as for the first thing in the morning. I have everything, my cup of water, everything is laid out. So I literally just have to roll out of bed and like put on my shoes and my breakfast is ready to go. Everything is there and I walk out the door and I'm ready. Like I prepare an environment so that winning is easy, because if I don't have a good environment, it's hard to win. And so I think that's one thing I learned from the book. So the moment to answer your question would be when I was in Austria and I was like, I need to be a better coach. How do I do that? And, more recently, a couple of years ago, reading Atomic Habits by James Clear was a book that really, kind of transformed the way that I live, and I'm really thankful for it.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
And they have the book in German, by the way, because I saw they had the book in a bunch of languages, so you can find it in German too.
Okay.
I'll think about it. Yeah, of course.
Atomic Habits. Thank you. I forgot my next question. It was just a pleasure to listen to you. So I forgot everything I wanted to say. Yeah. One thing. 2 questions actually that came up to me. So one thing I just want to ask you, you're a coach as well. How do you instill resilience into a player? And the second question is, did you already use your knowledge about atomic habits that you built into your training routine with your players?
Yeah, what was the first one you said? I'm sorry.
How do you instill resilience?
Resilience. Yeah, that's a good question. Oh man, I could go on about this too, so I'll try to be mindful of the time. So with the national team, so we have 4 things that we are built on. So we call our 4 pillars of our program. You hear a lot of coaches will have like their 3, things that we're going to be known for, whatever. So we have 4 pillars of our program, and it's pride, effort, accountability, and grit. Pride, it's a national team. So we're all Belgian. In Belgium, we have people that speak French as their first language, people that speak Dutch as their first language, people that even speak German as their first language, near Aachen, near the border. So,
Yeah.
and then we coach in English because that's just the one that we all know. But we're all Belgian. I mean, I'm not, but all the players have to be Belgian. So pride is number one when it comes to a national team, I think, for sure. Effort, that's a non-negotiable. I think, wins and losses come and go, but nobody can judge effort. You should always be able to give effort. Third thing is accountability. And I think this kind of goes into how do you build resilience is, every good team is coach-led, meaning that the coach instills a vision and, okay, this is how we're going to do things. And it's, if I have to scream at you and yell at you, then that's just how it's going to be. But it's the coaches leading. Every good team is coach-led, but every great team eventually reaches a point where they become player-led. What I mean by that is like, it's not just the coaches yelling at the players, hey, we got to be like this. But it's like a player, a captain perhaps, looks around and is like, hey, no, that's not how we do things here. Let me show you how we do it. We give full speed. Like, it's the players looking around and like holding each other accountable. That is the thing that takes you to the next level. That is the thing that builds that resilience, because not only do you not want to let your coaches down, you don't want to let your buddies down. Like a guy maybe you've grown up with, or a guy that you've been to battle with, like you don't want to let those guys down. So I think that's a way to build resilience is instilling accountability. And so what we did with the national team this past year to kind of concretely put this into practice is we had accountability partners for every single player. So every single player on the team had a partner. And we tried, because we're kind of 50-50 split on French speakers, native, and native Dutch speakers. And we would even pair them with a player who's not from their club team, a player who speaks a different native language. So they had to actually communicate in English to improve their English too, which maybe isn't the case in Austria. And what we did was, if there was a player who missed practice or was late to practice and there wasn't a valid reason for it, his partner was in trouble. He had to run. He was one who was punished, not the guy who was late or the guy who missed. We didn't punish that guy. We punished his accountability partner. And so when you instill something like this and they know, man, we got to hold each other accountable or I'm going to be in trouble, even if I'm doing the right things. So that's one thing we did. And we saw a really big improvement, and, guys who were there and on time and everything. And the last pillar of our program is grit. So grit, you might have heard that word. It's tough to define, but there is a psychologist in the States, Angela Duckworth, who devoted her whole career to studying grit. And she defines grit as perseverance and passion for long-term goals. So if I want to be the best football player I can be, that's my long-term goal. Grit is having perseverance and passion to get there. That's kind of what grit is. And I think when you make grit an emphasis in your program like we do, hopefully that will, add to the mental resiliency of your players, because football, it's physical. You guys don't need to hear me tell you that, but it is a mental game. The mind, I learned this from another Austrian guy, Schwarzenegger. He said the mind always fails before the body does. Like, that's scientifically proven.
Yeah.
Just think about this with me. If you're doing bench press and you're doing a lot of weight for you, like it's close to your max, and you go down, it touches your chest, and you start to push back up. Before you give up physically, your brain will give up and send a signal to your body saying, I can't do this anymore. But it's always your brain that fails first. It's never your body. And so Schwarzenegger, I learned this from him. He was like, you have to control your brain. If you can win over your brain, you can do anything you want. And I know that sounds cliche and corny, but he was like, man, look at me. Like, I was a skinny kid growing up, didn't play sports, but like, I realized that the mind always fails before the body does. So if I can control the mind, I can do whatever I want. And so we make that an emphasis in our program, maybe more than some teams do. But we believe in that. And I think, that's hopefully helped us, to have some resiliency. So I think that might answer the first question. The second question about atomic habits and instilling that into our team. That's a good question. What's a way I've used atomic habits with my team? That's a good question.
Or what especially did you learn from that book? Can you tell us one part of it?
Yeah. So I mean, the whole premise, the whole idea of the book really is that little tiny things build up over time. It's the same like financial concept of compound interest, if you know what I mean. It's the same thing. You know, you put money in the bank. There is a stat came out a couple years ago in the United States that if you put, I forget the exact number, so this won't be exactly right, but it was like if you put, you know, $500 US into the bank every month, and you do that for like 10 years straight, you'll be a millionaire. But nobody will do it because it's hard for people to consistently over time, every single month without missing, put 500 in the bank and never take any more out. You're just depositing little 1% improvements, and over time it compound interest. So take this example. If you take a domino, normal size little domino, and if in theory you take a domino that is 1.5 times larger than it, so not twice as big, but just 1.5 times larger, and you put it in front of it, and you keep doing that. So you have a little domino, and then one in front of it that's 1.5 times larger, and then one in front of that that's 1.5 times larger, and then one in front of that that's 1.5 times larger. And if you do that 17 times, the 17th domino will be the size of the Empire State Building. But if you knock over the first domino that's this big, that's like a centimeter, it will eventually knock over the Empire State Building. Like that's how compound interest works. And so no one wants to do that because they don't want to put in the 1% improvements every day. And this is what the book talks about is like, you know, 1% improvements every day it's the way to go. It's not, you know, I don't want to life hack my way through life and take shortcuts. It's like, you know, I want to understand that, yeah, rest is really important, but I need to be working to improve every day. Like it's better to do less than you hoped than to do nothing at all. You know, a 1% improvement day is always better than a 0% improvement day. And so I think one thing that I've tried to instill in our team and our coaches is like, you know, we're not where we want to be right now. And chances are we won't be where we want to be tomorrow or maybe the day after that. But hopefully we can be 1% better tomorrow than we are today. And if we do that over time, we will get to where we want to go. We will. You know, like if, you know, you can't do the big things right if you'll never do the little things right. Like you'll never do the big things if you can't do the little things. Something like that. So I think, you know, these little tiny things, they seem small, but if you do them relentlessly over time and you never give up, you can do whatever you want to do.
Okay. Thank you, Spencer. I think
you guys got me all fired up now. I'm sweating. I'm like in coach mode.
I think hearing you talk is the best advertisement for you, for yourself, for your person.
Yeah.
You're a great person you're a great speaker. I like listening to you. So tell us a little bit, how can you, someone who sees that, who listens to this podcast, how can they see more of you, hear more of you? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you know, luckily we live in 2020 where social media and technology is easy. But you can find me on Facebook. I know we're connected there already, but it's Spencer Ferrari-Wood. There will probably be only one on Facebook with that name. That's me. It's the same on Instagram. It's S__ Ferrari-Wood. But if you just type in Spencer Ferrari-Wood, you'll see me. And yeah, the link to my website and everything is on there. So if you want to subscribe or I post something new every single Friday. So if you want to get notifications like that, you can find that all through like my Instagram page. You'll have a link to everything there.
Okay.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. It was really, really, really a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for taking the time.
We learned some great things, of course.
We learned a lot of great things about you. You give exceptional, great motivational speeches. I'm more or less speechless now.
Yeah.
And I'm fired up as well. I think I will take my playing things out of the cupboard now and do something the next weeks. Yeah, because now I'm fired up again. Thanks for that. Thanks for being on our podcast. And yeah, what else do you want to say to our listeners?
Yeah, no, thanks to you guys for having me on. It's always fun to talk about American football, but also talk about things that go beyond American football, because I think that can be more fun sometimes. There's a lot of resources out there for football fans and specific you know, techniques and things, but I think to talk about things that go beyond the game it's important, but it's fun for me too. So thanks for having me on. Yeah, I mean, just to the listeners, I don't know if there's one last thing I would want to say. I've probably said everything I want to say at this point, but I think it's, you know, it's just that. I think, you know, it's better to do less than you hoped than to do nothing at all. And I think quarantine has been a really good example of that, because we have a really built-in excuse now that's easy. Like, oh, well, I can't go work out because we're in quarantine, or I can't go work out. My gym isn't open right now, or I can't do this because of this. But, you know, a 1% improvement day is always going to be better than a 0% improvement day. So if you do that over and over again, you'll be happy with the results.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Spencer.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
It was a great talk, I guess. And I wish you all the best, of course.
Yeah. Thanks. We'll definitely be in touch, and we'll have to stay connected.
Yeah.
We will be. Thank you, Spencer.
Okay. Thank you very much. And to our viewers, I'll say, servus.
Servus.
Servus.